Do you often find yourself being over-tolerant or putting up with more than you should in a relationship? Surely, we all tend to be more vulnerable around the people we love, but this should certainly not be a reason to allow others to trample on you and your rights. Well, the best way to avoid this is by setting clear boundaries. After all, according to psychology, boundaries help ensure mutual respect and care in a relationship. However, it's often not only about setting boundaries, but more about setting the right boundaries. Of course, we can often be tempted to be more selfish when establishing boundaries, which is totally fine, by the way, since you're only outlining how you want to be treated in the relationship. But then, you must also be considerate enough to ensure your boundaries do not leave your partner disadvantaged. This will also help you to establish boundaries that will not make you feel guilty afterward. Luckily, this video will highlight the boundaries to set in a relationship without feeling guilty. So stick around until the end to discover the top safe boundaries you could put up to ensure healthy relationships. Number 1. Saying no. Well, this is one boundary that you must set if you want to be respected in a relationship. Sadly, some people often feel the need to go along with whatever their partner suggests, but you must have to address this if you want a healthy relationship. Saying no when you disagree is perfectly fine as long as you're not being disrespectful or rude. In fact, a relationship that does not allow you to say no is toxic and should be avoided at all costs. After all, a recent study of behavioral patterns shows that if you're not able to say no when you don't want to go with the flow, you'll find yourself compromising and conforming to things you would rather not compromise to. This is why you must set this boundary very early in the relationship when it's much easier. Number 2. Asking for space. Space boundary is among the most sought-after things in relationships today, but it surprisingly still ranks among the boundaries people are often scared to establish. This is probably because some people feel like they can lose their partner if they ask for space, while others do not even recognize they need space for themselves in a relationship. You would agree that taking a time out or asking for space helps you focus more on yourself and affords you the allowance to get your head straight and even solve problems better. In other words, you must normalize asking for space when you need time to yourself, and it's one boundary you shouldn't feel guilty about. Number 3. Demanding respect. Solid relationships are built on a few specific qualities that include mutual respect among others, and you should be free to demand respect from your partner at all times. In fact, it's paramount that you and your opinions are being respected in your relationships. So this is one of the first boundaries you must set if you want to make headway with your partner. Also, you should note that any partner that refuses to give you the respect you deserve should not be considered for a relationship. However, you must also recognize that respect is reciprocal, so you must be willing to afford them respect as well. Have you ever called off a relationship because your partner refused to give you the respect you deserved? Then please, go ahead and tell us about the experience in the comments section. Number 4. Refusing to take the blame when you're not guilty. You'll agree that there's not much worse than ending up with a toxic partner. It can be both physically and emotionally draining. And one way they'll oppress you is by making you take the blame, even when you've obviously done no wrong. Accepting these blames will cause you to always assume the role of the villain that you're not, which can take a considerable toll on your self-worth in the long run. To avoid this from happening, you must clearly establish the boundary of being able to refuse blame when you're not guilty. However, you shouldn't hesitate to acknowledge your wrongs and apologize for them when you're guilty. Number 5. Wanting to be your own person. Of course, relationships often have to involve a level of codependency, but it certainly isn't worth losing one's personality over. When a relationship is so consuming, it makes you lose focus of who you are outside the relationship. And it's this version of you that matters the most. You must be cautious enough to keep track of your identity outside your relationship. And the best way to go about this is to establish a clear boundary that allows you to be who you are. By the way, if you have problems being yourself or maintaining your identity outside a relationship, I recommend you reach out to onlinetherapy.com now. The professionals here recognize how essential it is that you're your own person, and they can help you rediscover your identity. Number 6. Demanding honesty. Another critical factor that decides how decent a relationship will be is trust, and you have every right to demand that your partner earns your trust. Indeed, your partner can only prove they're trustworthy by being honest and transparent. So you must remember this quality when establishing your boundaries. Also, while at it, you should never feel guilty for demanding honesty in a relationship. Number 7. Having a voice. As humans, we're entitled to our opinions, and this is one of our defining qualities. So you should never allow your opinions to be overlooked, especially in a relationship. Controlling partners can often attempt to take your voice and demand you do their bidding, no questions asked. But it shouldn't be so, and you must not succumb to any partner that attempts to take away your voice. In fact, you must lay it out as a ground rule that your opinions must be heard and duly considered, and you should never feel guilty about this decision. Number 8. Expressing sexual boundaries. Sexual boundaries are critical ones that often tend to be overlooked in a lot of relationships. Of course, this shouldn't be so. The fact that you own your own body gives you the sole right to decide when you want to be involved in any sexual activity or not. However, some people find it hard to understand the need to establish sexual boundaries with partners, and this has led to abuse of different forms. If you don't want this to be your case too, then you'd better be sure to set clear boundaries before going into any sexual relationship. Number 9. Accepting help. While individuality and independence are vital personal qualities that shouldn't be ignored in a relationship, it's perfectly okay to accept help when needed. Some people get so self-absorbed that they refuse to accept help when they need it, and they often do this in the name of independence. Well, you have the right to accept help from your partner when it's offered, and you can even demand it if necessary. Also, you should never be ashamed or feel guilty for accepting help from your partner in a relationship. Number 10. Demanding privacy. This boundary is similar to asking for space, but it's a bit more complicated and involves having your privacy even in your relationship. It's a common notion that couples are supposed to share everything, but this is not entirely accurate, and you can choose to only share what you feel like. While you can share a computer, it's up to you to decide if you want to share your email password. You can also choose to keep your thoughts, texts, diaries, and past life to yourself. And guess what? You don't have to feel guilty about it either. Did you learn something interesting from this video? Then you should watch out for our next video to learn more tips on how to manage your relationships.